Hello everybody, welcome back to the August edition of NMRAx. Today we have our very own Martyn Jenkins giving us a clinic about the lost layout of Mick Williams. Martyn, take it away.
Good morning there, Speed, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending wherever you are in the world. Yeah, they've rolled me out to do a clinic. Apparently, I've just come from the Redlands Model Train Show, and yeah, it was a good day there. And I'm doing a clinic, then I'm going to bed, and I'm getting up and heading back to the Redlands Model Train Show tomorrow. So yeah. Anyway, let's hit the presentation, and we'll take it from there. So, without any rehearsal from Speed, I'll see if my PowerPoint works. And there we go. It looks like everything's going there. So what we're going to do today is have a little look at a clinic I first saw in 2015 at the Portland NMRA convention, and it was done by a chap by the name of Kermit Paul, who unfortunately this year passed away. But Kermit did this clinic on the lost layout, a secret model railroad down under, and now it could be told. And that had me intrigued because I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know what layout was apparently down under that no one had spoken about. So I went to the clinic and I was totally fascinated. It was about a chap who had a very large O-scale and gauge 1 display in a suburb just south of Sydney. And this layout was quite spectacular. He actually built a separate building to house his model railway collection in. So I started to delve a bit deeper into it, and I found out that a chap that lives in Brisbane, just up the road from where I live, Craig Woodhead, was the live-in engineer there. So I managed to speak to both Kermit and Craig Woodhead, and got permission off them to put together a bit of a clinic, because I thought, well, the people in America now know about it, but people in Australia don't. So I've been going around doing this clinic now for a couple of years, and I've done a couple of after-dinner speaker spots where we've had a look at this layout. But anyway, so without any further ado, we'll go through this PowerPoint, and you'll have to listen to the dulcet tones of me explaining what's happening in each of the slides. And then at the end, there's a short video that was put together on the layout. Anyway, so in the late 70s, there was a chap by the name of Mick Williams, Mick Marsden Williams, and he had a layout built on his estate near Sydney, Australia, to operate the large collection of O-scale trains he had. And this is basically a story about the team that built and designed the layout for him, and a bit of a story on the layout itself, because it's quite spectacular when you look at some of the photos. Basically, the layout was built in secret because Mick was a fairly wealthy industrialist, and he didn't want people knowing he had this large railway collection. And so the layout was all designed basically for his entertainment only. If you did go there, you actually had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that you wouldn't talk about it, and no photos were to be taken of the layout while he was alive. The owner, Mick Marsden was his name, Mick Williams. The guy that project managed the actual build, which was the building of the building as well as the layout itself, was John Millington. The layout was designed by a chap in California by the name of Brooks Bowman. All the train controls were done by Kermit Paul, and it's pretty spectacular when we look at the train control system that he employed. Remember, this is back in the 1970s, well before DCC was even invented. And then some aspects from Craig, who was the live-in engineer. Yes, this guy actually employed someone to live in his train shed and maintain all his collection for him. And then after Craig left, the resident engineer was a chap by the name of Steve Flint, who's in the the video and describing some of the layout in there. But like I said, it was a purpose-built building. It was two layouts basically: a European section and an American section. And the layout was in O scale, so it was all two-rail O scale. Like I said, this was way before the invent of DCC or any digital type of control. So they were all analog controls, and as you can see there, this photo was taken from the control panel with the USA section on the left-hand side. That was the control panel for that. And on the right-hand side, part of the control panel for the European section. The control panels were all anodized stainless steel. They remind me of a 1960s audio mixing console when you have a look at them. They were just spectacular pieces of engineering. There's another shot there of the layout in the layout room itself, and they called the building that he had the tea house or the train house. Basically, what happened is next to his home up in the hills behind Mittagong on the south coast of New South Wales, he had his house, and he bought the house next door to put his layout in there. Not being satisfied with the house, he actually had it demolished, and he had a purpose-built building put in there which housed his layout. So this is that building. Unfortunately, now it's been sold and it's been converted into a home. So this no longer exists. As we can see there on the left hand on the photo there, the yards up on the actual layout. There's not much scenery. Mick wasn't interested in scenery. He just wanted to see trains moving, and so the layout was designed in that fact. You can see a couple of the yards there, but underneath the layout was a huge storage yard as well, which we will see. There's another photo there of the building itself. And as you can see on the outside there, that's the eaves of the actual house on the outside, and it was all Jarrah wood out there. We can see another shot here of the roundhouse, so the automated turntables. So these turntables were indexed and automated, so he could push a button up on the control panel, and the turntable would automatically rotate to the exact spot that he wanted. All the track work that we're going to see on this layout was all hand laid, and when we get to some points, you'll actually see inside double slips on a curve that go through like two sections of track. Well, they were all handmade, and this is back well before fast tracks or any of those jigs or tools were invented. So this was all manufactured well before that. So it was all hand filing and putting patterns down and then creating the rail to fit the patterns. So Mick Williams was a industrialist. He had a company called Shin Engineering, and he did a lot of the civil work on a large dam project down in Sydney on the called the Snowy River. And he also owned a number of engineering companies. Because his love for trains started when he was a kid, as most of us, it happens, was watching coal trains near Wollongong along the Australia's east coast. And from that, he got a fascination for model railways. So in later years, when he was wealthy enough, he built this huge collection. And if we get that, here we go. There's some photos there of Mick taking delivery of his latest BMW when that first came out. But the two photos on the right are rather interesting. That's Mick sitting entertaining in court there with his glass of red wine. And with him is John Millington in the white jumper, who was the project engineer for the train house. And on the far left is Kermit Paul, who was the guy who did this presentation originally, and also designed the control system for him. Down the bottom right-hand corner is a very interesting photo. Again, Mick sitting in the middle there, looking at his empty glass of wine, wondering whether we should open another bottle. And to his left is the guy that started Australian Model Railway Imports, Klaus. But on the right-hand, to his left-hand side, to Mick's left-hand side, is Mr. Sam Honkser. So he came out to have a look at the layout and look at where all these models that this guy in Australia had bought and was actually running, because Mr. Sam Honkser designed all these beautiful locos. As we all know, Sam Honkser is a big manufacturer of brass locomotives and the likes, but they were all meant to be displays that sat in a cabinet. But Mick actually had them running on the layout, and he came out to Australia just to see the actual layout. It was funny because at that time there was another guy up in Queensland had a moderate O-scale layout who was doing the same thing, but his layout was open to the general public. And around this time I remember working there, and all of a sudden this chap rolling up and introducing himself as Mr. Sam Honkser. And this was after he'd been down to see Mick Williams' layout in Sydney. He came up to look at Bob Harris's one up in Brisbane. And yeah, it was a bit of a shock. We didn't know why he was in the country. And anyway, okay, I'm going to the next one. So the train house. It was a 2-level design, 3,500 square feet in area. And it had a large layout and entertainment area up in the upper level. Mick, being a businessman, used to entertain a lot of overseas celebrities and the likes, as most businessmen do when they came to Australia. And instead of hiring a highfalutin restaurant and a big hotel in the city, he decided that he was going to use his train house as an entertainment area. So there was a large bar, there was a commercial kitchen built into the train house, and a large entertainment area outside that had a huge waterfall and water feature in there, as Mick was very much influenced by Japanese architecture and Japanese gardens. Downstairs there was the display cabinets, which we'll see in the video, with the 132nd collection and the Gauge 1 collection. It had guest rooms, it had a flat in there for the live-in engineer, and it had a big workshop to maintain all of the collection. So here we go. After he knocked down the existing house that was on the property next door to him, he started to make his train shed or his train house. I mean, who starts building their layout with a D7 Caterpillar bulldozer and digging half a mountain away? It's only someone like Mick Williams that would do that. You see down the bottom they're laying the slab for the bottom level of the train house. And one thing that always gets me when I look at these photos is the distinct lack of PPE or high-vis clothing. As you can see, the chap on the left here, he's basically got a pair of jeans on and a pair of boots and a pair of gloves, and that's about it for safety gear. So, as I said, this was all way back in about 1974 when this was being done. So you see there, the building's starting to take place. It was perched high up in the mountains, so it looked down over the coastline there at Mittagong. And as you can see on the left-hand side, they're starting to do the finish off the ground floor foundations, and there's all the steel work in there to hold the next level. And they're starting to build that now, the concrete wall. So as you can see, it was quite an extensive build, and they're putting the beams in there with the crane for the second floor. And this is the photo of the entertainment section that he had built outside. So as you can see on the left-hand side, the Atco shed had a big pool underneath it. So there's the workers' lunchroom shed. It was up there. They built a big pool there, and as you can see in the top right-hand corner, they made a dam wall. And then down on the bottom is a photo of the finished area. So that pool at the top was filled up with water, and then they had a big cascading waterfall down through a creek that ran down underneath the paved entertaining area. And of course, as most Aussies would have, on the left-hand side he's got a barbie. So we can, we're not going to throw any shrimp on the barbie because in Australia we only have prawns. Shrimp are just large fleas in Australia. So yeah, we'd throw a couple of prawns on the barbie, and that was his outdoor entertaining area. When we go inside, as you can see, it was built, you can tell by the decor that it was built in the 70s, with the gold etched bar at the front here, and then his wine collection at the back. And then down on the bottom right-hand corner, we've got a photo of the storage area before the display cabinets went in. On the right-hand side, behind that panelled wall, is where the workshop was that was in there. So we'll look at some plans in a minute. That was the entrance to the train shed, or the tea house, once it was finished. So as you can see, it's quite a grand entry to get in there with slate tiling on the floor there. And on the right-hand side down the bottom here, we can see another photo of the finished train house with the layout room up the top, and then down the bottom, the storage and display area and the kitchens and apartment for the live-in engineer. Okay, so who was the living engineer? So it was this chap, and I'll have a little drink there. There was this chap by the name of Craig Woodhead, who owned a company called EDA Electronics, which manufactured train control systems, so power supplies and DC train controllers like we used to have back in the 70s before digital DCC came out. He manufactured the AutoCab system under license from Kermit Paul, and he was the resident engineer at the train house for 9 years. He's also a long-time NMRA member in Division 1, and when he finished at the train house, there's a picture of Craig there in his younger days in the workshop of the train house, and there's a picture of him today down the bottom there with his 2 sons and his wife, and he owns a shop up in Brisbane called Hobby Rama, which is probably one of the largest hobby shops one of the last hobby shops in Brisbane, brick and mortar stores that are still about. And they cover everything from RC cars through to die-cast collectibles through to model trains and the whole lot. So Craig's still about. He's still active in the hobby, and he's still active in running his shop along with his 2 sons. So the trains. So most of them were made by Tenoshoda, Samhongsa and other manufacturers like that. They were all brass. They were either O or 1/32nd scale trains or gauge 1 trains. Many were exclusive production runs made for certain people. I remember Craig telling me one story about when he went to Mick went to Europe once, and Martyn was bringing out a brass crocodile, which is a European loco. But back in those days, and we're talking about the 70s, they were around about $5,000-6,000 a loco in gauge 1. And Mick bought 12 of them, 1 in every colour that they made. So, like I said, he wasn't short of a quid. And if he saw something that he really liked, he would buy a number of them. And we'll see that in the collection later on when we look at the video. So the design and the construction was done by a guy by the name of Brooks Bowman from Southern California. And the idea was to run as many trains automatically for Mick to sit there and watch. He didn't like actually running the trains himself, and he didn't want a large operating crew there, but he wanted lots of trains running and and he didn't want any scenery or anything to get in the way. He just wanted to see the operation of the trains themselves. Here's a copy of the drawings of the train house when he built it. So we got the stairs on the left-hand side coming in. You can see the bar area which he took. We've seen those photos of him sitting down with different people, having a nice glass of red there. And then outside to the entertainment area outside. And then this big, massive area in here was where the layout was based. And if we look at the next drawing, this is the drawing of the bottom section. So up the top here, we've got the workshop. So that was the workshop there with the stairs going up to the train place upstairs. And then over here on the right-hand side, we have the accommodation for the live-in engineer. So as you can see, there was a toilet, bathroom, a kitchen in there, a lounge room, and 2 separate bedrooms that were in there for the live-in engineer. So that's where Craig lived for 9 odd years until he decided he was getting married and going to start his own business up in Brisbane. If we have a look here, there's a panoramic shot of the actual upstairs of the train shed or the train tea house after the layout was removed. The people that bought it after Mick passed away, because none of this could be disclosed while he was alive. It was only after he passed away in 2013 that we were allowed to talk about this, and all of this came to fruition. So as you can see there, the layout's all gone. Unfortunately, by the time Craig had got up there, that's Craig on the left-hand side, most of the layout had all been chopped up and taken to the tip. So he was only able to rescue some parts of the track work, which is very sad because he hand-laid all the track work that was in this layout. And it's now been converted into a house. So all this has been divided up into bedrooms, lounge rooms, and the likes, and it's now been turned into a standard dwelling. So we can see there the 2 layouts, the track plan. So this is the upper deck of the layout with the 2 turntables. As I said, one half was European, the other half was USA based. And you could actually run a train through the hidden storage underneath from one section to the other. So it could take quite a while for the same train to actually make its way up into both sections. But as you can see, there's both have got a very large yard section. And if you look over here, you can see on the track plan, the double crossovers that he made that went from one track. So these are double crossovers on a curve, and they're all hand-laid and handmade. Underneath, this was the hidden storage, and it had occupancy detection in there. When you look at the video later on, you'll see when they show the underside of the layout, all these lights. So all the occupancy detection was done optically. And so because this was hidden storage, above each above each sensor for the occupancy detection, there was an incandescent light. And when the train passed over between the light and the sensor, obviously it put it into darkness, and the system recognised that that's where the train was at that time. So like I said, this was all done well before digital control or anything like that came about. And we'll look at the control system later on because that's pretty spectacular on its own. So how are we doing here for time? We're doing well. There's 25. So yeah, so Craig started to copy the track plan over into a CAD drawing, and these were the results of it. So what was the layout made out of? It was all Tasmanian redwood timber, which these days now would be a rarity. And like I said, all of this ended up at the tip. So yeah, it's rather sad. But the top was 20mm plywood with a 12mm kainite, or we call it kainite in Australia, but it's homosote in America, top surface. And here's some photos of the layout being built up on the upper deck. So this would be the hidden storage here. and then this would be the upper deck of the layout across the top here. We can see some other photos there of the actual construction. And like I said, all of this track is all hand-laid track. So it's not, there's no atlas or micro-engineering set track used in this layout at all. It's all hand-laid. So these lengths of track were manufactured in a jig or an assembly off-site and then laid into and then put into the layout. I think the only thing they had was track setters, which are an English invention for straightening out your track and the likes. So it was all nickel silver, code 125, prefabricated in Japan with Japanese cherry wood ties. The complex track work, as I said, was made by Craig Woodhead and it was all made on site. And it included inside and outside double slip switches on vast curbs. Because basically the entry to get into the hidden storage was straight after the curves, and you could go from any track on the main line straight across and down into hidden storage by these double slips. All the switches were operated by PFM switch motors, which were an early version of the tortoise switch motors. And then they used a diode matrix to switch the polarity for the route so that you had a constant feed of power heading straight into each of the hidden storage yards. Whoop, hang on, I think we just missed a slide there. Let's go back. And there we go. We can see some of the photos there of the track work. So as you can see, there's point work here. I mean, you've got a curved track here, and we've got 3 sets of points. It's like a curved 3-way going through there. Well, that's all hand laid without the use of fast tracks, jigs or anything like that. It's all hand bent and set with basically a template, and then manufacture the pieces of rail to go over the top. But there's no filing jigs or whatever, so these were all filed by hand for each of the installations. As you can see down here where the switch machines and the blades would have actually moved on the points to set the different routes. But that's some example of the track work that Craig made. As I said, it was spectacular when you see it on the video. So the turntables. So he had 2 48 stall tracks on these turntables, and they were machined aluminium, and they were custom made by his engineering company. They were all computer controlled. Well, originally they were relay logic controlled, but eventually they were transferred to computer control, and there was a 286 PC that used to run both of the 2 turntables. So like I said, we're back in the 1970s, so even if when they did make it computer controlled, it was very, very basic computing. There was no super duper machines like you have today. Here's a picture of the controller up on the panel itself, and like I said, the control panel was like a mixing console from EMI in the Beatles era. It truly was a work of art, and luckily we've got one of the control panels which is now at the Railway Museum in Ipswich up in Queensland. So as you can see, you dial it round to whichever track you wanted the turntable to go to, and then you can see there's 3 LEDs that would light up. Well, actually, sorry, I'll rephrase that. They're not LEDs, they're incandescent lamps that would light up red, yellow and green to tell you whether the track was aligned and the track power was connected, so you could drive straight from the road on the turntable onto the turntable itself, and then you could turn the index around to then take it out on the output track. Down below is a picture of the back of that switch itself, and you couldn't buy a switch with all the contacts that they needed. So his engineering company actually designed and built the rotary switches to operate the turntables. But if you look at the wiring, I mean, it's just like I said, a work of art. This whole layout, everything about it was a work of art, and no dollar was spared on making it. There's the indexing, so there's the rings that tell the system where it's been indexed, and then the power that's delivered to both the track and the turntable bridge itself, and then the motor that's underneath that drives the actual turntable. So this was all custom made. It was all made out of machined aluminium. As I said, nothing like this had been built before, not in this scale anyway. So there was a lot of firsts in there. We can see this young chap here. I've forgotten his name, but he's actually doing the programming of the PC that ran the turntable. But again, on the left-hand side, you can see some of this track work that Craig had built, and you can see these double slips coming up onto a curve, going down into hidden storage, and then coming back up on the two right-hand main lines. So, like I said, all of that was pretty spectacular. Down on the bottom right, we've got a picture of the turntable. Now, the interesting thing to note on the turntable, there was 48 roads that came in, but they were hard to count and work out which one was which. So Mick got half a dozen brass locos and had them painted all white. And those locos sat in those roads to mark, I think it was every fifth bay across, so that they could count which road they wanted to get the loco out. So these locos that were in the roundhouse that were painted white never used to go anywhere. They would just sit there as markers, so they knew which road was what, and they could count them from a distance. So Kermit Paul, who lives up in the Bay Area, I believe, was contracted to design and supply the control system to operate up to 20 trains automatically with only one or two operators in the room. So what he used was the Auto Cab Progressive Cab Control System, which was originally designed by Lynn Westcott. So as it says here, it was described in 1950s by Lynn Westcott of Model Railroader magazine as a system that automatically connects each train's cab to the blocks that are ahead of it and are occupied by the train at that time. So basically what they had was a bunch of cabs that would automatically switch from each block to each block as the train moved around the layout. So this system was designed by Kermit in the 70s as a modular PCC system suitable for any size of layout or track plan. The logic was all done with relay and diode based, since there was no computers or no automation in that time. But later on, the system was actually the foundation of Bruce Chubb's occupancy detection. So this is where it came from, the system that Bruce Chubb ended up developing, except by the time Bruce had done that, there was a bit more electronics, but this was all back when it was just relay logic and the likes. So not designed for automatic train operation per se. This was a display type layout. It included an auto engineer feature, which would then operate the layout with maybe only one person there, but up to 20 trains running. And so in this mode, you had cab signals, yellow and green, yellow, red and green. The yellow and red signals applied the train brakes, and the green cab signals released the train brakes. Very simple, but a very effective automated control system. And there we've got a picture of one of the two control racks that was shipped from the USA to Australia to run this layout. So on the left-hand side, we've got the power supplies for the 10 cabs. And then as we go across from left to right, they are all the blocks for each cab, which would get switched automatically by relay logic as the train was detected moving through the layout. So it would switch to the current area where the train was and the cab or the block ahead of it. And it would move the output from these cab controllers on the left-hand side along the layout. So as you can see there by the two chaps standing next to the crate that they built to put the control system in to ship it out to Australia, and there were two of these panels, one for each layout. So as you can see, it's quite extensive, the control system. So there were 10 amp transistor throttles with inertia effects. You had the 3-color signaling system, and you could either have it in manual or automatic engineer mode for each cab. So if you decided that he wanted to run one of the trains on his own, he could go up to the control panel and select that particular cab or that particular model, and he could run that manually. And by manually, you know, with a throttle like we'd have today. There's a picture of the control panel for one of the layouts. As you can see, it goes up to number 10. And this is what I mean about whenever I look at this, it reminds me of, you know, a mixing console at Abbey Road that the Beatles might have used. Up the top, you've got an amp meter and a voltmeter next to each other, all analog, of course. On the left-hand side, then coming down the panel, you've got the 3 incandescent lights that give you red, yellow, and green to tell you whether you've got a block that's occupied ahead. If you have, the yellow will come on, put the brakes on half. If it's the next one is got a train sitting in there, the red one will come on and stop the train altogether. You've got the inertia controls on the right-hand side with a toggle switch for the direction down below, and then the potentiometer right at the bottom to adjust the speed of that particular model. And like we said, when it was in auto cab mode, there was a servo switch next to it, or a servo motor that would drive that control potentiometer to speed up or slow down the model. But like I said, these panels were all custom made for the layout, and it really was a work of art. And it's like a 1970s hi-fi system there with the anodized aluminium and the etched lettering and the likes on there. So why not DCC? Well, it just wasn't about at that time. In 1972, no one had even thought about DCC at that time. Progressive cab control was about the only thing that you could do, and imagine if it was an early DCC system, the size of the decoders would be huge to go in a train drawing. Each of these trains drew up to a couple of amps each when they were running, so the decoders would have had to been fairly hefty using the electronics of that day. And of course, it did what he wanted to do. So the signaling system, so we just had cab signals for the operators of the trains. There was no actual trackside signals provided, and the occupancy detection was done by an optical system, which if you go back, if you've got an old version of Model Railroader and go back to August of 1973, there's a description in there about how the optical track detection system worked. But it basically used op amps and optical sensors. No sound, because of course nothing in those days could have replicated sound, and there was no convenient space available in the panels or anything to locate the sound systems, and Mick never really expressed any desire to actually hear sounds. I mean, if he saw what we can do with DCC and sound today, it'd be a totally different story. But back then, the closest you could get to sound was a reel-to-reel audio recorder underneath the layout playing ambient sounds. The track routing, conventional track diagram with block occupancy lights and switch controls located between the American and the European cabs allowed what they call the flyover, where you could go from the European or the American into the European and back again. So there's a picture of two people. I think that's John Millington on the right and Craig on the left, running trains on the American section of the layout. And as you can see, in the centre there is the control panel for all the points and switches and route switching. You can see the rotary dial there for the turntable to make that spin round. And then you can see up in on the yards that are in hidden storage and up on the layout, there's indication there of whether they're occupied or not. As I said, there's no DCC, so we haven't got anything fantastic in there telling us what actual train's there. It's just saying, is there a train there or not? There's a closer look at the control panel, and as I said, they're like a work of art. And we were lucky enough when the layout was pulled out that Craig did manage to get one of these control panels before they were damaged. The other one apparently was crushed, so it was beyond repair. And that's at the Ipswich Railway Museum, along with the collection, where the collection resides today. Here's a shot there of the workshop. As you can see, for early 70s, it's got a computer in there. Mick didn't spare any money with his hobby. Here's the tools that they use to make all the track work, the grinder for cutting the track work up and the lights. And if you look up on the left-hand side, they're on a rolling road as one of the Gauge 1 models that he had. There's a picture of the boys when they were laying the track for the actual roundhouse. It's John on the left and one of his helpers on the right. And as you can see, they've got real 1970s hairstyles. So now what happened to the collection at the end? After Mick passed away, his family divided the collection up, and he willed most of it to the Workshops Railway Museum in Ipswich, Queensland. In Ipswich, we've got a large railway workshop, which was where Queensland Railways was basically started, and he willed the collection there, which at the moment is all being catalogued and is actually on display. You can go and look on their website and see all the models actually on there. But the idea is Craig is trying to get some room in the actual museum to create either the European or the American layout, and actually have these models running, because although Mick did will them to the museum, he didn't want them to sit in display cabinets. He wanted them to be running like he used to see them running. So that's still being worked at, and as you can imagine, with any government-controlled museum or the likes, it's going to be a long and arduous process before that happens. There's the Railway Museum up in Brisbane, and we can see the collection there. So I believe there's a video that Brad has got there ready to run. So if you want to run that video and let us know when it's coming towards the end, we'll let everyone see what the train house looked like in real life.
This modest house, nestled unobtrusively in a leafy Wollongong suburb, is home to one of the world's largest collection of model trains, close to 20,000 items collected by Marsden Mr. Mick Williams. The tea house features thousands of pieces of rolling stock from Z gauge to 1, modelled after trains representing 11 different nations, handcrafted by the best model makers in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, France, Japan and South Korea. Entry to the tea house passes the workshop, where a full-time technician maintained the collection for nearly 20 years. A team of people working to the precise direction of Mr. Mick developed the building, built the layout, set up the displays and maintained inventory. Their collaborative effort resulted in the creation of the magical train house. The original residence on the site proved inadequate as the collection grew, and a new brick and slate building was designed to house the 1-gauge locomotives in glass cases on the first level. Thousands of HO gauge models, packaging never opened, rest at the ready for a layout that never materialised. From the early 1980s to early 2000, only pieces judged by Mr. Mick to be excellent were added to the collection, mostly 1 and O gauge. The HO and N pieces were packed away to make room for German, Swiss, Austrian and French. German through to American. German, French, Swiss and a few Japanese locos were commissioned, ordered, received and included in the collection.
I suppose it's just a natural progression up through from N gauge to HO to O gauge. Eventually 1 gauge is probably the most sophisticated, the best detailed, the best engineered gauge. So I mean, obviously the closer you get to the prototype, the better the model's going to be.
As demand for Australian locos of this quality and value was limited, Reynolds models represent Australia.
My jaw dropped the first time I walked in.
The tea house second level featured 2 custom-designed O-gauge model railway layouts with computer-driven and monitored controls along 4.5 kilometres of hand-extruded nickel-silver track. Complete with sensors along the track, relays and touchscreen controls, the quality and volume has no equal in Australia. In the late 20th century, as computers evolved, so did the technology applied in the layout at the tea house. Capable of running 20 trains at one time, a day of operation could accommodate 240 working models. Meanwhile, another 400 pieces of the collection, locos and other rolling stock stood ready to serve in the roundhouses and laybys of the 2 halves of the layout.
He dressed it up to the point where he could still see the trains. If there was more buildings, trees and landscapings, it would have blocked the vision of what he really wanted to see. His passion was locomotives. He wanted to have a layout for them to run on, but the scenery wasn't near as important as the mechanical item running around the track.
The capacity of this layout to run trains is unequalled in Australia.
The whole thing is as best as we possibly could do with the materials that we had available at the time. It was a progression thing. Originally the layout was built, it operated with relays. Each block was set up and operated with relays. That was a good system for a while, and of course in the end it ended up being computer controlled. We've got optical sensors around the track and we tried to make it as perfect for him as we could.
Some of the track work is really beautiful. Those crossings and switches. built on curves. They're really exceptional.
The layout consists of two parts, modelled on the operating systems of two different continents, American rail and European rail. Trains can fly over to the other continent to complete a full circuit, which takes around 40 minutes. In his 70s, Mr. Mick finally commissioned a piece of rolling stock to run on his layout in honour of the train that started the collection.
Of course, the rule was a railway yard, and that, of course, was the interest. There's a small truck here. It always fascinated me. It's the simplest truck. I can remember them coming to Thirroul in reality. Very simple. Not to the extent where I went to Korea to have it made as a proper model.
The O-gauge rolling stock, the items collected to run on the layout, comprise about 20% of the total number of pieces in the collection. The 1-gauge locos displayed behind glass are the jewels of the collection. For Mr. Mick, the collection was never about numbers. It was about engineering quality, detail and accuracy to the actual locomotive. In the 1-gauge, this is most obvious, most critical. Until now, the tea house collection was truly a secret. Fewer than 40 people visited the tea house, and then only by private invitation, to see the collection.
No, he was very worried about vandalism. He only had a very small group of people, international and local, that would come, but he was extremely private. We were all sworn to secrecy.
He was very, very private about it. There was never to be any photos of it, and it was never to be talked about. So you didn't.
Mr. Mick died in September 2013, aged 97. It was his wish that the collection be gifted to the people of Australia. The Wollongong-based company he founded, Shin Investments, has donated items in his name to the Workshops Rail Museum in Queensland and the University of Wollongong.
Wow.
So yes, bit of a large layout, isn't it? When you see the video.
Amazing. You ready for a few questions?
Oh, why not? Let's see what we can do.
Have you seen the layout in person?
Unfortunately, I never saw it. I only ever heard about this after I went to the Portland convention in 2015 and saw Kermit doing this presentation. But basically, in Australia, in the model rail fraternity, there was probably only about 5 people, other than the people that worked on the layout for him, that actually saw it. And if you did see it, you had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that you wouldn't talk about it and you wouldn't take any photos of it. It was only after he passed away that it became public.
Wow. So, not related to the layout, but you mentioned some coal running through Wollongong. Where did that go from and to where?
So that came out of the mines out the back in central New South Wales and ran down to the power stations in Wollongong and out to the docks when it was shipped off. Australia has a good reputation for shipping coal all around the world. We've got some of the highest yield coal in Australia, the highest heat output of any other type of coal, and we still do that in Queensland.
Cool. Now, you said the layout was, when Craig arrived, taken to the tip.
Yep. Okay, so a tip to the Americans would be landfill or refuse. So basically it all ended up in landfill.
That is not cool.
No, no.
There were lights in the tunnels. Was that just detail?
No, that was the occupancy detection system. So the occupancy detection used light sensors, basically light-dependent resistors that were buried between the tracks. So, of course, when the train went into hidden storage and all underneath the layout, each of those sensors had to have its own light source above the sensor for it to work. So when you saw those shots of the hidden storage where it was going down in there and you saw all the lights, they were all above optical sensors for occupancy detection.
Cool. Are there any notable pieces or parts of the collection you are fond of?
Probably the locos themselves. When you saw the video, when you saw the display cabinets of some of those locos, like I said, there's a whole bunch of crocodiles there, which are a pretty odd-looking European loco, and they were all brass gauge 1 made by Martyn or Merklin, as they call it in Germany. But I would have to say that the rolling stock and the locos that he had were spectacular.
Do you know if all those locos were brass?
Every one of them was brass. There was no plastic in the collection at all. Even the rolling stock was all brass. So all of the tank cars and everything was brass. It was before the days of injection molded plastic models, basically. Anything of that detail was all either brass with lost wax castings or machined parts.
So where did all the engines and rolling stock come from?
They came from manufacturers like Sam Hongsa in Korea, GEM models in Japan. He had a whole bunch of cab forwards there in two-rail O-scale, which were manufactured by GEM models out of Japan, out of Tokyo. And this is before Kato or any of those brands had come about in Japan. The rest of them were Merklin, Roco, and the likes. There's actually a neat story about he went to Germany on holidays and he decided while he was away that he was going to come back and make an extension to the train, the T house, and build a large HO layout. So he went to the Roco factory and basically said, "I'll buy one of everything that you make." Wow. So when you saw the shots in the video of the storage area downstairs with all the display cabinets, there were all these cardboard boxes around the outside. Well, that was all the Roco models that he bought on that trip to Europe. So,
oh wow! Was the O-scale layout true O-scale, like Proto 48?
Yes.
As we have today?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then no scenery, no trees, no buildings?
Nope. He just wanted to see the trains running, and to him, scenery was an obstacle in the way. So he just wanted to sit back and watch the models. And as you can imagine, they're all brass, so the movement of the mechanisms on the side would have been spectacular. He didn't want any of that to be obscured by scenery, as he put it.
That was just amazing. Last question. We're running out of time. Who made the video?
Who made the video? The video was made professionally by his company after he passed away, as a montage basically of what the collection was, and as a record of his actual layout before it was removed and the building was sold and the collection dispersed. All the HO stuff ended up going to the University of Wollongong, and then all the Gauge 1 and O-scale stuff ended up at the Ipswich Railway Museums up here in Queensland. But if you notice in that video, on the table in the middle of that collection room, there was a huge collection of wood planes, and that was another hobby of his, was collecting hand tools. So there was a huge collection of wood planes there that were again donated to another organisation. So
pretty neat. Well, Martyn, thank you very, very much. That was just an amazing layout that I'm so sad that very few of us or people before us had the opportunity to see. And we'll be right back after we let Eric in.
No problems. Now I'm going to head back to bed, and I've got to get up in the morning and head to the Redlands Model Train Show to extol the virtues of Balloon Army Dakotars with them. So I shall bid you all a fond farewell, finish my cup of tea here, and head to bed.
See you soon.
Bye.